Good evening, everyone. Slash afternoon. It's lovely to see such a full room to commemorate something so special. It is truly a profound honour to stand before you all today. Looking back, it feels like just yesterday I was a wide-eyed fresher, stepping into these hallowed halls, mostly terrified, a little confused, and very unsure of whether I was dressed appropriately. 6 consecutive terms on committee later, the journey has been nothing short of extraordinary and exhausting, but the perspective gained has been invaluable. Today, we gather here not only to celebrate, but to reflect on the courage, the change makers, and the moments that have shaped the Oxford Union into what it is today. As we reflect, we must of course return to the moment that made this all possible. You'll be familiar with it. A little controversial at the time, as most good ideas tend to be, and led by a certain young president who, despite some pushback, had the vision and conviction to bring forward a motion that would change the course of Union history, the admission of women. Michael Beloff's motion wasn't just brave, it was bold, it was necessary, and it was above all else transformative, because it didn't just open a door, it made it impossible to close it again. There's a saying in politics that success has many parents, but in this case, the parent is sitting right here with us. And I, for one, couldn't be more grateful to be one of the many beneficiaries of his legacy. Michael, if you hadn't taken the flak then, I certainly wouldn't be standing here now, let alone standing here as your first black woman to hold this office of president. Everything I've achieved and every debate I've chaired, every school child who we've welcomed through these gates, it is all rooted in the motion that you passed. So thank you for your courage, your clarity, and your absolute refusal to be reasonable when reasonableness was no longer acceptable. As you prepare to unveil the plaque commemorating the momentous decision, know that your legacy is more than metal and marble. It lives in the young women who chair our debates. It lives in the second all-woman officer team that I've had the privilege of serving with. And it lives quite literally on the cover of our term card. The Trinity term card reimagines a historic photo of the chamber that's in the president's office. Once filled entirely with men, has now been flipped. Stylized in the 20th century Nigerian postage stamp, it shows Jenny Grove, Rose Dugdale, 2 women who disguised themselves as men just to access this space. That cover honours not only them, but also Millicent Fawcett, Lucy Sutherland, and Judith O'Kelly, all of those who refused to let the door stay closed. Because of them, 42 women have now served as president. And because of Michael Beloff, one of the rare men who made room rather than taking it, the number keeps growing. And yet, our work is far from done. Our very first speaker this term, Nobel Peace Prize laureate Narges Mohammadi, could not join us in person. Her passport has been confiscated by Iranian authorities, not because she poses a threat, but because she speaks out for women's rights. That absence is a sobering reminder that what we enjoy here is rare, and that it's not just our job to protect it, but to preserve it and yes, to keep pushing it forward. This term, we held our 4th all-women debate lineup in our history just a couple of days ago. We welcomed more speakers than any other term this academic year, women speakers, than any other term this academic year. We carried out 8 school visits, bringing the union closer to communities who never imagined they belonged here. We've demystified our rules, we've put governance on a firmer footing, and while Michael chaired, we proudly passed a rules change to fly the pride flag under the union's highest authority, because visibility still matters. Progress is not just measured in the courage of those who open the doors, but in the resolve of those who keep walking through them. It has been my privilege to walk a little further this year, and I hope in doing so that I've helped make the path clearer for the next. To the women of the Oxford Union, past, present, and still to come, your brilliance, your courage, and your stubbornness continue to make this place better than it was before. And to Michael, you lit the torch. Thank you for letting the rest of us carry it. Thank you all. Wow.
Madam President, thank you for your extremely gracious and also very inspiring words. And ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome. I must start with an apology. I am, as is clear, underdressed for an occasion of this kind, Had it not been for the temperatures rising into the 30s, I would, of course, have tried to get back into the white tie and suit that I wore as a president, though I do recollect that once when I had to go to a grand day at Gray's Inn and try to fit myself in, I realised that time had wrought a struggle and I had capitulated to it. Not only an apology, I've got to start with an admission of guilt. I've never been a believer in the equality of sexes, and my clear mitigation is that I've always believed in the superiority of the female sex. When I was very young, that's 75, give or take a few years ago, my favourite book was Louise Alcott's famous classic, Little Women. Whether this was the cause or effect of my feminism, I fear I cannot remember. It's very difficult in 2025 to imagine how the case against the admission of women to the Union could have been advanced, if that is the right verb, with any semblance of seriousness. I've looked in the archives of ISIS and Charwell, which in those days used to report in some detail Union debates, and I tried to extract the main points from the opposition as fairly as I can, and they appeared to me to be twofold. One, we have to start from this place as we find it, and two, this is essentially a boys' club. Well, that seemed to me then, and the more so seems to be now, arguments in favour of the motion I moved rather than against it. The fight has, as you remarked, Madam President, a long history. And by coincidence, my late father, Max Lord Beloff, was the first member to try in the mid-30s to promote women from third to second-class citizens by making them debating members. Debating membership as a category was finally achieved in 1962, though a year before, as you mentioned, Madam President, two women disguised as men, a kind of reverse version of the famous 1890s farce Charlie's Aunt, successfully gate-crashed the debate. Now, one of them, Rose Dugdale, later became a militant member of the Irish Republican Army, committed many acts of violence in support of their cause, so her gate-crashing of the Union stands somewhat low in her lifetime acts of rebellion. In Michaelmas term, 1962, when I was president, the first attempt to upgrade women to full membership was defeated. And though my name, as you will see mentioned on the plaque, the credit for the victory that was achieved next term was shared by many, some of whom I'm very happy to see here. There was Karen Hewitt, then MacLeod, the first woman editor of ISIS, who was vigorous in her support of the motion. Roderick and Cynthia Flood, stalwarts of the Labour Club and campaigned for nuclear disarmament. Rod has, of course, been knighted for his services to education. In short, he's travelled from CND to KBE. Not a unique person who's been on that particular journey. There are others who are no longer here, but are with us still alive. Lawrence Reed, who was the scion of the famous family of outfitters, did his national service in the Navy before he came up, and I'm told in Wikipedia that he was actually a witness to the first thermonuclear experiment. Later he became a Conservative Member of Parliament, but he is important because he actually resigned as Treasurer after the first failed vote, and that was truly an act of principle because he ruled himself out from standing himself for the presidency, an office he might well have achieved. Someone else, who alas is no longer with us, was Garth Pratt, again vigorous in the campaign, president in Hillary of 1964, a power in local politics in Rochdale. But again, checking out his career in Wikipedia, I discovered that he was supplanted as the prospective Liberal candidate for that constituency in favour of one Cyril Smith. Those of you who follow modern politics will realise that with the benefit of hindsight, that was not the wisest choice the Liberal Party had ever made. Now, I would, on this, the 80th anniversary of victory in Europe, borrow the famous phrase, well, I had the luck to be called upon to give the roar, were it not for the fact that to see myself in the guise of Winston Churchill would appear excessively vain, even by my own very high standards. To take the story forward, in 1966, we had the first female officer. In 1968, we had the first female president. There were two intervening presidents before Benazir Bhutto became the third female president. She was neither the first woman, nor, of course, the first Asian, but she was the first to combine those two particular features. And then immediately succeeding after her was Victoria Schofield, number 4, who is now chair of OLDUT, the trustees body, has been really dedicated in her service to the union over a long period of time, against, in some circumstances, very difficult. And she is writing another history of the union. All I need to tell you is that the words "for king and country" appear in the title, and I simply advise you all to start saving now. Of course, the fight for equal rights did go on. The union, I remark, did get there before any of the Oxford colleges, which became coeducational with only a few exceptions in the 1970s. But equality persisted in the oddest of places. I once, when by then a Queen's Counsel, had to advise no less an august institution than the Oxford and Cambridge Club that according female graduates of our two ancient universities less access to its facilities than their male equivalents was obviously unlawful discrimination. I didn't do the advice pro bono, but I didn't feel that it was necessary to charge very much, because anyone, even a first-year student, would have recognised what the result was. Heaven knows this was in the late 1990s. Heaven knows how, and more importantly, why that situation persisted for so long. Now, it's a happy coincidence, Madam President, and I think explains the date of this particular ceremony, that for, I believe, the first time in the union's history, all 4 officers are women, in the Supreme Court sense of the word, and not always recognised by our current Prime Minister. But I only recognise the full significance of this change when, just as we were all leaving to enter the chamber after a dinner to which you kindly invited me earlier this term, we were momentarily delayed by one of the officers saying, "Just wait a little, I have to freshen up my lip gloss." Well, that wouldn't have happened in my day. At least I don't think so. So may I end just by thanking you all very much for coming to this particular celebration. It is, of course, a celebration not of any particular person, but of an important event. So thank you very much. Now let us proceed to the so-called unveiling of the plaque.